So why do men seek validation? What's really going on? In this video, we're going to talk about 3 reasons men seek validation. We're going to start understanding sort of this nice guy behavior pattern and where it may have come from. So a lot of this information I gathered from Alice Miller's book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, which I really recommend checking out. And the quote that she basically talks about here is, "The truth about our childhood is that it is stored up in our body. And although we can repress it, we can never alter it." So basically what that means to me is that there's something happening in our bodies. It's a visceral experience when we're seeking approval. And it can be explained through some of the childhood dynamics that we had with our caregivers. So we're going to talk about a dynamic here that happens with all children, which is the molding of the child to meet emotional needs. So basically what has happened in our childhood is that our mothers who were unable to meet their emotional needs as children with their own mothers, then in turn seek through the child to get their own emotional needs met. And because the baby is unable to run away, the baby becomes sort of this unending source of presence and a witness to the mother. And so what the baby starts to do is it starts to mold itself to the mother's needs. And it does so for survival. So because the baby's not able to run away, the mother then molds the child into not who the child truly is, but rather into who the child can be in order to meet the needs of the mother. So this is sort of where the early stages of the needs are being met. So an example of this could be mom and dad get into a fight, and instead of mom going and working through with the therapist or going and talking to and resolving things with dad, then goes to the child, and because she's in a state needs cheered up, the baby then takes on that role of cheering mother up, or having some sort of emotional need met that wasn't met through the connection between the father. And so as children, we start adapting ourselves to what our mother's needs. And we also do this for our father as well. But this really happens in the early infantile stages with the bond and the connection to the mother in particular. So this dynamic basically leads to 3 sort of phenomenon that occurs. So shame as a result of unmet emotional needs, which we will get to in a second, the inauthentic adaptation to parental expectations, and the repression of true emotions. So we do not know who we are inside, so we look to the outside world to tell us who we are. And because we're repressing our emotions, and we have this inauthentic expression of who we are, we're constantly looking to the outside world to tell us who we are, and we don't really have a secure sense of self. I love this photo, or this painting here. This is William Blake, The Good and Evil Angels, and I think that it kind of does an interesting representation of what trauma looks like. And is actually on Dr. Kalshed's book, Trauma and the Soul, if you're interested in checking that out as well. So shame as a result of unmet emotional needs. So in Alice Miller's book, she suggests that shame arises when a child's emotional needs are not adequately met, particularly in the form of emotional neglect or mistreatment. When children's authentic feelings and needs are dismissed or invalidated by caregivers, they may internalize a sense of shame. So that's kind of what we're talking about here when we're talking about this approval-seeking or validation-seeking behavior, is that we cannot talk about that without also talking about shame. And what is shame? Well, shame is an emotion that we pick up from having traumatic experiences, or experiences where our emotional needs were not met as children. And there's a quote that I heard the other day that really speaks to me, which is that anything less than nurturing is neglect. And that's just the truth of it. And so when we don't have our emotional needs met as children in a healthy way, which has happened to all of us to some capacity, then we develop shame about who we are. And ultimately, we become just shameful towards having needs in the first place, towards being human. And this is where perfectionism comes from. And these feelings of unworthiness actually make it so it's more difficult to meet our needs in the future as adults as well. And this is a protection mechanism that we developed as children in order to survive, but it no longer serves us in adulthood. And down here we have this quote, the "because I said so" quote. which is something that I think a lot of parents end up saying at some point when a child is just trying to understand, well, I want to go here. I have this need to go see my friend, or I have this need to go and do something. And the mother says no. And instead of giving a logical and thorough explanation or trying to understand the child's needs, they just say, because I said so. And it just shuts everything down. Another reason we adopt validation seeking patterns is the inauthentic adaptation to parental expectations. So what basically happens is that we start becoming extremely sensitive to what our parents expect of us and who we are. So children may become adept at sensing and fulfilling their parents' emotional needs, often at the expense of their own authenticity. And this can lead to the inability to be true to oneself, and once again can lead to profound feelings of shame. And so we become who our parents need us to be and not who we really are. And this happens in just with overall sense of authority as well. Many of us may have perceived careers or done well in school or gone the opposite route based off of the parental expectations of who they wanted us to be. And we learned as children that we got validated for having good grades, for being good at sports, for being good at art, for whatever our particular gift was. Our parents validated us or invalidated us, which is just as toxic. And this isn't to speak to the authenticity of normal and healthy praise. This is to speak to the parental expectations of doing well at school so that the image of the family, aka the validational needs of the parents, can be met. So as you can see that there's an expectation created in order to have the parents' needs met instead of the child's needs met. And we feel unsafe when our parents feel unsafe. So if our parents are having an extremely stressful day, or they're worried about money, or the relationship is on the fritz, as children, we sense that. And as infants, we even sense that. And what we try to do is we try to balance and emotionally regulate the family. And we become sort of this emotional regulator, just constantly sensing our parents' distress, and we become different roles, like fixers for the family, or we become humorous to try and make it seem like everything is okay, even when it really isn't. We do things because we don't want to feel those really dark and uncomfortable emotions that may come up in the family unit. Another aspect of this is the repression of true emotions, aka the repression of who we really are, the authenticity of who we really are in any given moment. So our parents may have validated us for certain emotions such as joy and laughter and humor, and maybe just certain expressions of who you are. And then they invalidate us, maybe if they didn't like when we were angry, or when we were being loud, or having certain emotional expressions. They may have shamed us or put fear into us around having a particular type of experience with an emotion. Now, there are no good or bad emotions. We have all of our emotions because we're human, and that's an expression of who we are. And emotions come from our mammalian brain. There isn't a bad emotion. Anger is not a bad emotion. Anger is an emotion that we experience as humans. And many of us were told that anger is not an okay thing to express. And so we stuff that down inside of us. And even though we don't have conscious access to it, that doesn't mean it still isn't there and doesn't have a desire to be enacted. And this is where the idea of the shadow comes into play. So Miller discusses that children often repress their true emotions and needs to gain approval and love from their caregivers. This repression becomes a defense mechanism, and the suppressed emotions may resurface later in life, influencing adult behavior and relationships. So once again, we repress who we really are for the needs of our parents. We repress who we are for the needs of society. We repress who we are so that other people can approve of us. And once again, I want to also bring into the conversation that this isn't, even this sacrifice of self isn't necessarily a bad thing. We did this in order to survive, and that's okay. And it no longer serves us at some point, and it's a protection mechanism and a defense mechanism that we can grow out of. At one point, it did serve us when we were in a family unit and we were actually dependent on others, and we did need other people to have approval of us in order for us to get our needs met. And as we become adults, we can learn to meet our own needs, and we can become a greater authentic expression of who we truly are. I love this quote by Alice Miller. For one is free from it only when self-esteem is based on the authenticity of one's own feelings and not on the possessions of certain qualities. So basically, what that means is that when we're able to experience and express the authenticity of our emotional state, and as men, that's a very difficult thing to do because a lot of us were told that being emotional is a woman thing, or that being emotional is somehow a word that a client of mine recently uses. He was called a pussy as a child for having emotions, and I've had similar experiences as well. That when I experience my emotional state, that I'm shamed for crying. Stiffen up that upper lip. I'll give you something to cry about. These are very common themes that may have come about from our parents. That when we were expressing the authenticity of who we are, we were instantly shamed for it. And what do we do as soon as we experience that? We zip it up. And every time we ever experience anything that may have a effect on our emotional state, we shut it down. Our body may go numb. And so the work, especially with men, is to move from the head back into the body, to move from the head back into feeling what's actually going on. And our natural male and masculine mode of expression is to be able to feel what's happening inside of our bodies. And as men, it's very typical that we start using intellectualization as a defense mechanism. And so a way to start working with this is, once again, to move from the head back into the body, to start feeling sensations that are occurring in the body. When I'm working with clients, it's very difficult for men to make the connection that they're actually feeling something inside of their chest or stomach, or that they have these different sensations that are going on in the body, because there's a disconnect there. We've disconnected ourselves from our emotional body, basically from our body. It's like we're living in the head. And because of that, life may feel dull. Life may not feel it has a full flavor. It's very difficult to connect with a sense of purpose, or to connect with even the divine, or to connect with the mystery of life, because we don't have access to this whole other way of being inside of ourselves. And once again, so it's having connection to our feelings, but then it's not validating ourselves for being, for how much money we make, for being good looking, for having quote unquote these qualities about being human. It's recognizing that we are already validated for who we are, and that in every moment we have access to this. And it's the retraining that it's okay to just be. It's okay to be who I am. It's okay to feel how I feel. And then we can learn how to enact these emotions in healthy ways that don't end up hurting other people, because when we don't have access to our emotions, they still come out. And we end up poking other people with these emotions, maybe in very serious ways or very subtle and toxic ways as well. And this is where the nice guy behavior pattern comes from, is that the nice guy really does not want to rock the boat. The nice guy really wants to just mend everything and make sure everything is okay, and really has a difficult time stepping into uncomfortability, confrontation, or just difficult emotions in general, because they don't want to feel those emotions inside of themselves. Once again, going back into their childhood and understanding that they weren't allowed to feel who they truly were. So our emotions are the access to our authentic self. So how do we heal this? How do we work with this? So it is a generational cycle. So this happens within humans. That's just a part of the experience of being a human, is that we have this cycle that happens. And so I want to acknowledge a couple things. No one's to blame. This is just an unconscious process that occurs within the human species. And we are to forgive ourselves for doing this, for sacrificing who we truly are to get our needs met, because we did what we had to do in order to survive. And then it involves connecting to your authenticity, aka feeling your emotions. It's becoming who you truly are. And how do we do that? Well, there are many different modalities and different ways to work with it. Very common ways to work with a specialist, like myself, or working maybe in certain ways. Breath work is an amazing way to get in the body. Ice baths, saunas, playing in sports is once again a great way to start connecting with the body, but also different ways to start connecting with deeper emotions. There are different healing modalities and therapeutic techniques that can be used. And really an amazing place to work with this is in a safe space, working one-on-one with an individual who is able to just provide a container for you to learn how to express who you really are, and maybe be able to point out some of those things. So if you are looking to work one-on-one with a specialist, you can click the link below and schedule a free consultation with me. We can talk about what that would be like to work together. And on this call, we can explore some of the root cause of your validation seeking. We can help you to rediscover your authenticity, and we can learn to develop healthy and meaningful relationships. So if you are looking to work with a specialist, go ahead and click the link below, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I spend a lot of time making these presentations and these videos. So if you would please like and subscribe, it would really help. It would help this video get into YouTube's algorithm. It's free for you to do. And I would really appreciate it. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.